Good morning. It's nice to have you with us today. You've heard me say before that it's always interesting to me to talk with someone who has made it to the very top of their profession. When that person began that journey here in Upper Michigan, the story is even more interesting. And that is the story we have for you this morning. It starts right now. Our guest this morning is someone who started his career in radio at WJPD in Ishpeming in the 1960s. While he was still in his 20s, he made it to the big time.
From the Rock of Chicago, the Kris Erik Stevens Show.
WLS Chicago.
802 on the Big 89. This was number one in the year 1970. Tom Jones. Now she's...
Kris Erik Stevens not only made it big in radio, he went on and started his own company where he used his exceptional and creative voice talents for some of the largest networks and companies in the country. I talked to Kris Stevens from his home in Los Angeles about his very successful career and asked him how it all began.
I was in high school. I had a little rock and roll band, and I used to, get up on the microphone doing the weddings and things back in Ishpeming. And every time I'd go to sing a song, I said, "I want to sing a song for you now." And when I would go do that, everybody would put their head in their hands and say, "Oh my God, the guy can't sing, but I sure like it when he talks to us on the microphone." And I kind of got the idea maybe I should stop singing. And I went to my friend, actually my aunt, and said, "Can you help me out? I'd like to get a job at the local radio station because I love rock and roll and I think I can do that." And one thing led to another. Still in high school, and I did the all-night show while I was a senior in high school. That's how it kind of started.
And I think that was back in the early 60s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh.
You carved out a really successful career, and we'll talk more about that. But I understand, talking was something that even when you were a kid was something you were into.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was thrown out of school for talking too much, too many times. My mother said, "You really need to curb your enthusiasm and stop, just blurting it out there." But yeah, I talked for, almost a lot, that was part of the thing. And it was just a natural for me to do that. I think just being a conversationalist, I was excited about things and I would, talk a little too much, I guess.
So you're this young man working in radio. When did you decide that perhaps radio could be your career?
Well, I guess when I did it and I got on the air, I just knew that I loved it. To me, and my mother would call me in the middle of the night and say, "You're in high school. You need to come home and get some sleep. You're a young growing boy." And I said, "Mom, I'm very important out here, And she said, "No, you're not. Only people listening is the police department and me." And you need to come home. And I said, but I loved it. I was really into it. So I just kind of knew that this was really good for me. And I loved every part of it. So I kind of took it all the way. And I was enrolled to go to Northern Michigan University at the time. And I really didn't continue on that situation right away because I just wanted to kind of stay on the radio and get this thing going on for myself,
I kind of liken this to a kid who goes into baseball, for example. You start in the high school and you work your way up through the minor leagues and you kind of shoot to get to the major leagues. So you've got to move on. And you at some point decided it was time to leave this area and take that first big step. And where did you go from there?
What happened is briefly while I was at WJPD, the Jan radio station offered me the job, WCKD at the time. I went there briefly, and that kind of folded up, and not on my behalf, but it did. So I wound up going up to WMPL in Hancock for a brief time, and then that JPD called me and said, "Can you come back?" Typical radio business, and I said,
Right.
"Sure, I'll come back." And I got back to WJPD, worked there for another year or so, and then said, "I got to get out of town here." And I had dreams to go to WLS in Chicago. That was my goal in life. And that was really like stringing it way out there because that's the station I grew up listening to. So I could relate to it. And it was almost like that's where I wanted to go. And I said that, I think almost to everybody that I knew at the time. Long and short of it was, I wrote a letter to every radio station from Ishpeming, Michigan, to Gary, Indiana, sending them a little tape saying, I want to be in radio and I can come and work at your station, da, 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 da. Long and short of it was, the last station on the list offered me a job in Gary, Indiana, out of WJPD in Ishpeming, and I had to get there like right away because a new station was going on the air there. And so I got that gig, and that was my first big move, and that was a pretty good sized move from Ishpeming to a city like Gary, and it was definitely different for me.
And I know you wound up in Omaha, Nebraska at one point.
Yeah, right.
That again is
Gary,
a little bigger market, right?
Yeah, exactly. I kind of like got myself going pretty well in Gary, and I wanted to get more into another area, so I got a gig in what was it? KOIL. Yeah, the Coil Good Guys at Omaha, Nebraska. Did that, and I can kind of run it through for you from there. That I was there about a year, and I had aspirations to get to a bigger market. I just was very ambitious, and I landed a job in Detroit at CKLW, a major rock and roll station. We were Station of the Year that year. I had to be the youngest guy on the radio in Detroit, Michigan, and I remember, clearly because the program director in Detroit said, "You have to come into the radio station." I said, "Excuse me, there's a riot going on out there. Which part did you get? There's no gasoline. What am I going to do?" He said, "You need to come into the radio station." So I said, "Okay." I didn't want to lose my gig, jumped in the car, went to downtown Detroit, did the thing at CK. And first song I played on the air was "Light My Fire." That was kind of a problem. They said, I guess I wanted to get back at them a little bit for forcing me to come in. But anyway, so Detroit. And then from Detroit, I went to Atlanta, Georgia. And then I went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And from there to WLS in Chicago. So within a couple of years, that was the deal.
I'll be back with more of our conversation with Erik Stevens after we pause for these important messages. Getting back to our conversation with Erik Stevens, I asked him how he landed his dream job at WLS in Chicago.
Actually, I was out of a job in Atlanta, and I drove, just going to tell you about. So I needed to come up with another job in the radio business, and KYA in San Francisco hired me to come to KYA. And the other station that wanted me was in Pittsburgh. So I drove all the way out to San Francisco, and and then I found out I got there, and I said, "I'm never going to be able to, live here. It's expensive. I can't do that." So I called up the people back in Pittsburgh. I said, "You know what? I'm here. After a couple of days, I haven't started yet. I'm going to take a pass on this gig. Is it still open for me in Pittsburgh?" And they said, "Yeah, as soon as you get here." And I got in my car. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I drove nonstop, 26 hours on the road to Laramie, Wyoming from San Francisco. Got up the next day, drove to Chicago, and then my brother happened to be in Chicago. He said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I thought you're supposed to be," I said, "Don't even ask," But the long and short of it was that a friend of mine who I worked with in Omaha was at WLS. And I thought on my way to Pittsburgh, I'm going to stop into that radio station, WLS, and talk to my buddy. So when I walked into the station, because I always wanted to see what it looked like, and I knew I was going to, I just felt I was going to make it there. So I'm talking to him, and I'm at WLS, and the program director walked by and kind of said hi or something like that. And I kind of didn't even pay attention to the guy. And I said, I'd like to meet, and I said to my friend, "I'd like to meet the program director here, Bob." And he said, "You just snubbed him. He just walked by." I said, "You gotta be kidding me. Are you kidding?" So as it turned out, I walked into his office and I said, "Mr. Rook," and his name was John Rook. And I said, "I'm like this and that." And he said, "Yeah, I've heard about you and this and that." And I said, So what happened is, I then went on to the Pittsburgh station, which was ABC owned. I started doing very well in Pittsburgh very quickly. And the guy in Chicago said, he was ABC WLS, and said, I want that kid up here." So they talked to each other. And 4 months later, I left Pittsburgh after just getting there. And they offered me the job in Chicago. I forgot to ask them how much they were paying. I just said, I'm there. That was it.
Was it all you hoped it would be? Something you were striving for all those years?
Oh yeah, it was absolutely amazing to me. I got the thing, and I showed up on Valentine's Day, and on that station or whatever it was, and it was kind of a scary situation because it was 50,000 watts, Class A clear channel, which really means it covers the United States at night. Right. They hired me to do a nighttime kind of teenage rock and roll show. So I was being heard all over, in Canoga Park, California to, Miami, Florida, and on a skip, you could pick it up in Australia. So that station was huge. So fan mail starts coming in and all kinds of things that I wasn't used to at that time, but I was still, Ned Nice guy from back in Ishpeming trying to answer fan letters and stuff like that because it was the right thing to do, And so it proceeded along and it got bigger and bigger, and it was really, really quite wonderful. And yeah, but I was subjected to a lot of situations, and with tons of artists who wanted to be close to me, because if I played their record on the radio, they were definitely gonna. It would become a hit pretty much. I mean, because there was so much influence on that station. It was so big, covered so much territory. So, well, and I was just having the time of my life, to be honest with you. I mean, it's like, why are you kidding me?
And I'm sure there were a lot of people right here in Upper Michigan who were listening to Kris Erik Stevens. I know they did, and they didn't even know this was a kid from Ishpeming.
No, right? Because yeah. But my closest friend, I remember I got a telegram from him. He went, well, I'll be damned if I get say. He said, you made it. I mean, no. Of course, my sister and my brother and, my dad and my parents and everything like that said, well, this is where the kid said he was going to go. So anyway, and it was a big deal for me. Yeah.
You had such a successful career in radio, but I don't know what you think, but you've become almost, more successful in the business you developed after that.
Yes.
You do, for the benefit of our audience, you do voiceovers, you do commercials, you do station promos, you do just so much voice work. How did you get started in that?
Well, what happened is when I got out here, I really did drive out to LA, and I did not have a job, and that was taking a big risk. I think but no risk, no reward kind of thing. And I pulled up in Los Angeles, California, and one thing led to another. Met a lady there that I thought was really pretty important in my life, and I wanted to get out of radio. But the truth of the matter was, I got into studying acting, and that was where I was going to be. But I realized I had to pay the bills all of a sudden, and maybe I have to. So I made a call to the #1 radio station in LA. And I said, I'm in town. And they said, Kris Erik Stevens, are you kidding? What are you doing? I said, yeah, I'm kind of looking to do something on the radio. And he said, you know what? I'll fire the 9 to noon guy. Can you be in here tomorrow? That's the kind of business it was. But he knew who I was, and he knew my reputation. And I was on Kiss FM the next day, playing the hits in LA. And that was fine. But I knew that I needed to get out of that business.
When we return, I'll talk with Kris Stevens about how he started a new business venture when it was time to put the nomad life of radio announcer behind him. Kris Stevens became highly successful in using his voice in commercials, promos, animation, and radio specials. I asked him how that business started.
I started this little business out of like a second floor apartment complex. And it was really like, wow, can I do this? And one thing led to another, to another, to another. And pretty soon, I had a lot of clients and a lot of things going on. And, I bought a house and one other thing. And then I moved my studio out of this little apartment complex thing. And I got a place on Ventura Boulevard in Sherman Oaks, built a studio on the second floor of an office building, which was really soundproofing and all kinds of things like that, and started my own business. So it was recording studio rental. And
I know, there's some Hollywood stars who do voiceovers, and, people kind of recognize their voice, but they don't know exactly who they are. But I think they get big bucks for that. For you, you weren't going for that recognizable voice, were you? You had to develop a lot of different voices to make this work.
Well, I almost was there before they were, in the sense, because the movie stars did not want to do that kind of thing, because that was way beneath where they were at. And I was fine with that idea. So Casey Kasem, who I knew too, he was making a really good living at it, and a few other people, but it was a natural for me to take, my voice and put it on the road, so to speak. I got an agent, William Morris and Cunningham and so on, and, began to do commercials in addition to having a broadcast entertainment company. And I wound up having a staff of about 12, 13, 14 people. And I started putting deals together with the stars who were coming to my place so that we would interview them, so that I would then take that and put it onto syndicated radio programs that played all over the country. So I had deals with ABC, CBS, and other people. And I hosted a thing called Entertainment Coast to Coast. I did Saturday, spotlight specials with Stevie Nicks and tons of people. I did a deal with the Rolling Stones, and I mean, I did all kinds of stuff. And I look back today, excuse me, and I kind of wonder how I did that. It's like, how did you, because I was, a bunch of balls in the air at all times, and it turned out to be pretty good.
I can guarantee our audience they've heard you but didn't know they were listening to you. You've done, I know you've done Chevy trucks, you've done Pizza Hut, you've done NBC. I mean, you've done voiceover work for literally hundreds of clients, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I've done for people all over the world. I can do right from here from my home. I can hook up with China and do a narration for them if they have the need, because I can connect now the way it is. And I'm like the image voice of radio and television stations around the country. It's kind of that voice guy that stands out, at the top. He's different or whatever. So I did image voicing for radio, image for TV. I also wound up with doing the movie tunes for that was on every movie theater in the United States. And my partner in that deal was Robert Kardashian.
Okay.
Kim's father. He knew who I was. He came to me with his idea he had and wanted to use me to do the recording of it and then do hosting it and so on. And for about 10 years, if you walked into any movie theater in the United States, you heard my voice. I mean, I was the voice that happened before the movie started.
How do you look back on all of your career? Well, what do you think as you look back?
Honestly, truthfully, I can't believe I did all of the things that I did. I really said to myself, how did you do all of that in a day? Because I'm so thankful that I talk for a living. People pay me to talk. Now that's not overly difficult to do, when you have a big mouth, so I was always talking too much. So I guess I was ambitious and went after it. And I was, a bit of luck and, tenacity and coming up with concepts and ideas and being able to perform, because there's great producers out there. And I mean, if you go in to do a voiceover session, they are paying you to perform. It's just like an acting gig, but you're a voice actor, and you need to be able to do what they need to do at the time. And that's what you're there for. And so you got to be flexible, and you need to know what to do with your voice, or how to change it, or, get into a character to do what you do. I know some guys who are like a farmyard, they can do all kinds of sounds and all, but I have more of a voice that does promos, or that's this distinguished, that kind of thing.
You didn't try to become the Mel Blanc of today, if you remember.
No.
If folks don't remember Mel,
but I still have done cartoons, and I still see my stuff here on the Smurfs I did, and Richie Rich, and a lot of these little cartoon things. And so I did a lot of that. Did a lot of movie trailers also. But I was always like chasing it. I was always chasing after it. I mean, I would send out things to people, to remind them. I mean, even to this day, I'll do a thing that you go to my website, which is www.chriserikstevens.com, but you got to know what I spell out to put it together. And when you get there, I mean, people can hear it, see it, do it, and say, yeah, that's the guy I would like to do this particular thing.
Yeah, and I would recommend people check it out, because you have a lot of samples of your work that people can. It's just kind of fun to check it out. I've probably used up more time than I have. Any final thoughts for the folks back in Upper Michigan before we wrap it up?
Well, I just, the only thing I can say is that, that town will always be close to my heart. I mean, I grew up there. I love the people that were there, and I'm very thankful that I was able to do what I needed to do from there. And I guess I got a little bit of a decent reputation out of it at the end of the day. And, and thanks for asking me to get together here on this. I really appreciate it.
you've been immensely successful, and I really appreciate your taking the time to spend some time with us. It was really good talking with you.
Great talking to you, Don. I used to listen to you when I was a kid.
That's right. I am a little bit older. I enjoyed doing that interview so much, it actually ran past the time available. But you can see the full interview starting tomorrow afternoon at uppermichigansource.com. Kris enjoyed great success for a kid who started his career journey at WJPD in Ishpeming. I'll be back in 2 minutes. While surfing the internet the other day, I saw a headline that shocked me to the core. The headline said, "Santa Claus laid off." Well, this pandemic we're all fighting has done a lot of damage, but had it really gone this far? Santa Claus is laid off? It sounded far-fetched, so I quickly clicked on the headline to see more details and soon learned that Macy's department store had announced that Santa Claus would not be greeting kids at its flagship store in New York. Well, I breathed a deep sigh of relief. They weren't talking about the real Santa Claus at the North Pole in that headline. They weren't saying that Santa Claus wouldn't be coming this year. They were talking about a department store Santa Claus. I have to admit, even that is big news, since this marks the end of a holiday tradition that started nearly 160 years ago. The story I read said that Santa will appear at the end of Macy's televised Thanksgiving Day parade. But it turns out there's more to that story. This year's event will be a virtual parade with some live elements, whatever that means. Well, virtual or not, I'm sure some of us will be there to watch when the parade hits the airwaves. After all, what is Thanksgiving? Macy's parade, NFL football, and a turkey dinner. You know, we may not be able to spend it with family this year, but the other traditions will still be there. Let's hope we get back to normal soon. Back in a minute. Time to ring down the curtain on another report. Remember, you can also watch this show on uppermichigansource.com. It was a real pleasure for me to share some memories with Kris Erik Stevens this morning. He's had a most interesting and amazing career. I hope you enjoyed the show and will join us again next Sunday morning.